Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
So welcome to another T2 Hubcast with me, Dave Pendleton.
And me, Spencer Locker.
Hey up!
Hey up, I nearly said Martin Johnson then.
Well, of course, I mean, that would be the normal routine, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
So the dynamic is very different today.
Yeah.
I'm in the driving seat, El Capitano for this podcast, and you're sat across from me, which is an unusual scenario for Spencer.
Yeah, it's different and it's strangely enjoyable.
Okay, moving on very quickly. Not sure what's going on over there. However, I'm inclined to agree. No, it's just nice. Spencer and I very rarely get the chance to share thoughts and opinions, to converse sometimes.
Yes,
because
it's been very busy, hasn't it?
In the sort of fleeting 45 minutes that we might spend in the office together in the morning, I'm running about prepping materials, you're running about prepping materials, the printer's going, there's a Zoom's fallen over, delegates not arriving, attending, cancellations, et cetera, people dialing in at 8:10 instead of 9:10, and all those interesting things that is the world of L&D that we live in, right?
Yeah.
So it is nice just to put our feet on the ground. What was the expression you used earlier on?
What, in one of the previous 4 attempts at recording this?
Yeah.
I can't remember now.
But it was better than putting your feet on the ground anyway.
Yeah. It was taking a moment, I think.
Taking a moment. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a moment to explore a topic and subject that Spencer's been researching and reading about fairly recently. I'm going to let Spencer do the positioning because he's actually going to educate me today, which is great. So I'm incredibly interested in this the topic that Spencer's going to walk through today, which is fundamentals of gratitude.
Yes. So, Dave, as much as you might sort of say educating you, some of the basics that we're going to be talking about is something that you do know about, actually, but we'll get to that in a moment. So this was sort of created, informed, driven, if you like, off the back of a session that I did with some delegates not so long back. So we're talking about the subject was reward and recognition. And listening to the delegates, the stories they were telling, the explanations they were giving, the perspectives they were sharing, really sort of made me sort of reflect on what we talk about with reward and recognition and how we pitch that, how it looks to different people. Because of course we do cover the basics of a lot of things, and people take those basics and put it into their own context. So as a leader, a manager or an organisation, what does this particular concept look from our side of the fence, if you like? What does it look like for my organisation? So we talked about reward and recognition, and the basics we were talking about was what we were talking about, or we talk about on day one. So we talk about challenge state initially. So communicating with your people or communicating with yourself from a challenge state perspective, where you're encouraging people to do what you want them to do, whilst making it instructional. So telling them what you want them to do and how to do it, as opposed to the threat state that we talk about, which is basically what you don't want them to do and what you want them to avoid. Mm-hmm. So you've got the clarity of purpose, clarity of objective, whatever. Then they'll go away and do it. And these people could be a number of different people, but I think the basics are either they're new and inexperienced, or young and inexperienced, however which way you want to pitch it. Or it might be somebody who is quite experienced, so you don't really want to tell them how to do something because that could be seen as patronising. Mm-hmm. So what you do is give them a micro affirmation, a little bit of encouragement, just to make them feel a bit good. Mm. So they'll go away and they'll do it to varying levels of success. And if they achieve what you want them to achieve, you say thank you. You acknowledge, you recognise that they've achieved what you want them to achieve. Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What if they don't achieve it? Mm. They've still tried. They may have tried, and so you still say thank you. You still acknowledge the effort they've put in. However, then you'll start addressing the shortcomings through challenge state language, so that the next time they do it, then you know what, they've got a better chance of success. And when you do that, that stimulates either one, whether it's achieving or not achieving, you're stimulating those brain chemicals. So the oxytocin, the serotonin, and possibly the dopamine. Actually, people feel good because you've turned around and you've said thank you. You've acknowledged the work they've done, and what this does then is it sort of creates a solution-focused relationship. And creates a solution-focused environment. So there's a certain amount of trust there. And it sets an example of excellence for other people as well. And basically what happens then is the next time you ask somebody to perform a task in that challenge state way, their brain chemicals will kick off early. Yes, I will do this. I'll feel good about doing this because I know when I do this, this person will say thank you and acknowledge it and reward it. And you know what? It creates a good environment and it makes people feel good. And that's what we want to do, isn't it? We want people to feel good doing what they do.
Of course. And you're right, Spencer, in terms of mentioning those brain chemicals, because it's going to help to build trust as well, right?
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. So presenting somebody with some sort of problem that they need to solve to get right, and then saying thanks or well done or whatever it might be, it serves several purposes, of course.
Certainly.
All right, awesome. So that's our challenge state. Okay, what's next?
So when we start doing that, and it's particularly the middle bit really. It's this acknowledgement that whether they achieve or whether they don't achieve, saying thank you. It's this gratitude that you do. Because what's the alternative? What is the alternative?
I know the alternative in many organisations. I've witnessed it.
Yeah. But it's basically it's that sort of that transactional relationship, isn't it?
Sure.
I come to work, I do my job, I get paid. The job I do it as I do what I need to do and no more. And people who are managing or leading that organisation, well, I pay them. They should do the job that so it's a transactional relationship. It means nothing. It's I get paid to do what I've got to do. But when actually, and I think the final point I'm going to make at the end of this session really sort of underlines it, but I want to leave that till the end.
Absolutely.
So when we start talking about that displaying of gratitude, I've recognised there's four fundamentals. There's four things off the back of what these delegates were saying and subsequent research and sort of reading up on things and talking to other people and you may remember I was asking you some questions last week. I think it was just off the cuff. They actually informed what I was saying as well. I can't remember what those questions were off the top of my head. But when we start talking about these four fundamentals of gratitude, you might sort of recognise one or two of them.
So just to be clear then, because we've spoken about this many times, Spencer, about the reward and recognition topic as a whole is a very broad, wide and tall subject, right?
Yeah.
Because the very topic itself strikes fear into the hearts of leaders and HR people and OD people and so forth, because it's so difficult to get right. Because
Certainly.
when we think about reward and recognition, we just think about the materialistic things, right?
Certainly, yeah. And we know that we've been through this. We've discussed this. That when we start looking at the results of certain surveys and things like that, actually a couple of extra quid in the wage packet comes quite low down. Or when we start considering the vast people, what means reward and recognition means to you, what does it actually mean? How could we actually do this? Because it's our bread and butter talking about diversity, about talking about difference, about different things mean different things to different people. So there's no one silver bullet. There's no one thing that covers everything. You've got to take into account all this diversity. So when we start talking about the fundamentals of gratitude, it's real basic stuff. It's not specific, because again, when you start talking about specifics, that'll work for some people, not work for others. So we're talking about real basic stuff, things that you can actually, again, I'm not saying pick up and use, but really think about and consider when starting to reflect on your own way of recognizing and displaying, recognizing behaviors, positive behaviors, and displaying gratitude for those.
So we're labeling this as 4 fundamentals, Spencer. Is that correct?
Yeah. Let's do that.
All right, cool.
Let's label it. Yeah.
So if there are indeed 4 fundamentals, can you explain to us what fundamental 1 is?
Fundamental number 1. Fundamental number 1 is immediacy, immediate.
Oh, immediacy.
Yeah, immediacy, immediate.
Very good.
The closer the recognition is to the behaviour, the more likely it is to be repeated.
All right. So I think instantly I've got the theme there. So somebody does something, we don't wait 3 weeks to say thanks.
Yeah. If you can sort of put yourself in that position where, let's say for the sake of argument, you've done something, a good delivery or a good engagement with a client or something like that, you feel quite good about it. You feel like it was good. You got those brain chemicals. You've got a connection with the client or the delegates or whatever, and straight after that, you sort of feel quite good about it. Yeah. And then 3 weeks later, Martin turns around and says, "You know that thing you did with such and such last month? Good job." What happens then?
Well, I suppose, I mean, listen, Spence, you know my two is always happy, I suppose, to receive any kind of positive feedback. But I think you're right. I think in terms of, 3 weeks later, it sort of becomes diluted.
Yeah.
I think is maybe a good phrase.
Yeah, that at the time you had all those brain chemicals because you sort of felt that it was good. But for somebody else to come in straight away and go, "Knocked out of the park there, sunshine, well done," it sort of solidifies it. It sort of underlines it. It gives it a certain amount of validity, and sort of go, "Yeah, actually, yeah, it was good. Yeah." Okay.
So a bit more in the moment type scenario.
Or within reason. Within reason, yeah. I mean, at least within 24 hours, I would have said. I mean, don't get me wrong. Particularly, we're quite an agile organisation, so it might be that you're doing a delivery in Cheltenham and Martin's doing something in Italy.
I get Cheltenham and Martin gets Italy.
You know it's stacked that
Listen,
way.
I'm sat in this chair today, Spence.
But yeah, sometimes with time differences and locations and commitments and all that, it can't be immediate. But as soon as you possibly can, rather than looking at it weeks or days or weeks or whatever down the road. Yeah?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Awesome.
Good stuff.
So fundamental number 2.
Fundamental number 2. Parity. Okay?
It's an interesting word, parity.
We could also use the word balance, I suppose.
Okay.
Right? So as you know, we've talked about this. Life is all about balance. All about balance. If you get that balance right, life sort of works, doesn't it?
It does.
So I was talking to this delegate. I was talking to this particular HR professional, shall we say, HR professional, and she turned around. We were talking about the immediacy, about the gratitude. We were talking about the brain chemicals and this, that, and the other. And she turned around. She had a right look on her face, a bit of a dismissive, a bit furrowed eyebrows and thin lips. She says, "Oh no, I haven't got time to do that." Sorry, I'm saying, "You what?" She says, "I haven't got time to run around telling people what a good job they've done. Crikey, I'm a busy HR professional, I'm blah, 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 blah." So I'm saying, right, okay, can I just sort of quantify this? You're telling me that you haven't got time to tell people when they've done a good job. No, I haven't got time to do that. They know when they've done a good job. They don't need me to tell them. So, okay then. So the natural progression from that for me is you haven't got the time to tell them when they've done something wrong either. No.
Of course.
If they've done something wrong, straight in there.
Yes.
Bang. Yeah, straight in there.
Typical scenarios,
yes,
right?
This is the thing. We need balance in life. So we need that parity. We need that balance. So, you've got to find the time to recognise success as much as you recognise failure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does, for sure. And I don't know, Spence, you can reflect on, parts of your past career as I well can, and probably recognise the latter explanation as much more normal behaviour. We are, or certainly leaders that I've worked with in the past, and people that I've observed, are very quick to tell somebody when they haven't done something very well, or it wasn't of equal quality, or it was just wrong, and completely forget the other bit.
Yeah.
So I totally agree and totally resonate with parity. I like that, Spence. Great.
Good stuff.
So, fundamental number 3.
Fundamental number 3. Specific. Specific.
Specific.
Yeah. General praise has no impact. Okay, so I'm
that's
talking
interesting.
So,
general praise has no impact.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're talking about here is, firstly, there's so many people out there who've been promoted into leadership and management, and they haven't had any training, and they've got very, very little experience, if anything. Yeah,
as we see on a daily basis.
We see on a daily basis. Absolutely. So somebody somewhere's actually gone on to online, or it's like somebody's gone online to look up a checklist for the fundamentals of good leadership. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they've got a checklist, and then they come to the bottom of the checklist at the end of the day, and the checklist sort of says something like, make sure the safe is locked, switch on all the alarms, thank everybody on the way out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So everybody's leaving the premises, and the manager's
for switching off the lights and locking the safe?
Yeah. and everybody's turning around going, and the leader's going, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And there's no there's no you know what I'm saying.
So it's more for the transactional sake of saying thanks.
Yeah, and we'll come on to that. We'll come on to that on a little bit more on the last fundamental.
Okay.
But it's that specific, that when somebody's done something, that specific thing, if that specific thing is needing to be recognised, whether it's a personal challenge, or whether it's a personal goal or an aim, or it's something that with a SMART target, something like that, it's got to be specific. That thing you did, quantifying it, top job. Yeah, it's specific. Whereas turning around to everybody and turning around and saying, right, everybody, you've done great work today. Well, you know what? They may have all done great work. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. But when something specific needs to be recognised, bang it in. And that's going to carry more credence with that solution-focused relationship and that trust than the general nice to say, you've all done a great job.
And I guess just to play devil's advocate slightly, you do mention, we frequently come across people with little or no management experience, and certainly have had little or no management education and training.
Yeah.
Surely, I guess it's a good starting point to give generic feedback. So, sales team have achieved a sales number at the end of the month, end of the quarter, whatever it might be. Whilst the contribution may not have been equal, some may have done better than others.
Yeah.
There is a positive result. So, congratulating the team is a good place to start, right?
Yeah. So, I agree. There's nothing wrong with a general praise. You've all done really well. That's nice.
Yep.
But we're talking about impact, and this is the buzzword. There is impact. So yes, general praise, good thing. It's a nice thing to do, and it's a starting point, as you say. It's a great starting point. However, when you do that general praise, everybody gets the thanks. When there's people in that group who've done specific things, then take them to one side and say thank you.
So we need to break it down a little more.
Yeah. Not necessarily on the big stage. You might use the big stage to say thank you to everybody.
Sure.
And then afterwards, can I just have a quick word with you? That particular thing that you've contributed to there, that's not gone unrecognised. Thank you very much for that. So everybody feels generally good because you've got your general praise, but there's no impact. But to actually turn around to somebody and specify that thing that you did that contributed to this success, I recognise it, top job. That's got impact.
So I guess as well, just to link into some other things that we talk about, Spence, when we talk around delivering feedback and trying where appropriate and possible to deliver positive feedback publicly for the same reasons that you connected to in terms of the brain drugs and brain chemicals.
Yes.
So do you think then a really great tip for a new manager, or of course a tenured manager, would be to put a little prep into that feedback, the positive feedback session, and do the specific and individual positive feedback in a group situation as well? Or is that too long-winded, too big? I don't know.
I wouldn't say that it's essential, but I wouldn't say it's bad either. I mean, you've got to read your team dynamics. If you feel that specific feedback is going to not only encourage the individual, but motivate and encourage the group as a whole, as a group of individuals, then that's great. However, that's not always the case. And it actually brings it on to the fourth fundamental, if I may be so bold to link in here.
Absolutely, of course.
Okay.
I think we've done specific quite well.
Right. Fundamental number 4.
Number 4.
Imperative. And when I say imperative, I'm saying that this is probably the most important point of everything we talk about, where it's talking about gratitude and reward and recognition and feedback. The imperative is it needs to be credible and it needs to be sincere.
Credible and sincere.
Yes.
Credible and sincere.
Credible
okay.
and sincere.
Just explain those for us.
Right. Okay. So remember when I'm saying when we're going through that checklist. Okay. Make sure the safe's locked, alarms turned on. Thank everybody on the way out.
Yeah.
Thank you for today. Thank you for today. Thank you for today.
Tick,
thank you
tick,
for today.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's on a tick list, it isn't credible. It's just something you say. Yeah. Mm. So those people that are walking out, you may say thank you, but do they feel thanked? Do they feel like they've been recognised? No, it's a tick list. It's on my tick list. So I'm saying thank you because it says here that I should say thank you, not because you deserve a thanks.
So it's transactional, as you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah. Okay. So when you start talking about giving specific feedback to a group dynamic, if you've created credibility, if you are a credible leader, a credible manager, then that sincere thanks, specific thanks, if it's going to motivate and infuse your team of individuals, spot on. But if somebody is going to be in that team, knowing your team dynamics, if somebody's in that team, go, oh, thanking them again for their great work. We never get that opportunity to do that. It can actually, and as a leader,
it can divide, right?
Yeah, it can divide rather than bring people together.
Sure.
So as a leader, well, you know what? Maybe that relationship that within that team needs a little bit of work. You don't particularly want to not thank the people who deserve thanks, but hey, if there's people out there who are sort of saying, I never get an opportunity to do that, and therefore I'll never get that specific thanks, well, that needs addressing as well.
Sure.
But you're only going to be able to address that when you are credible and when you are sincere in what you say. Because you don't, as soon as you become insincere or incredible, and I mean that in a negative way, not a positive way.
Sure.
You're an incredible boss. You're an incredible leader. Oh, thank you very much for that. No.
Cheers.
I meant it the other way.
Yeah.
As soon as you lose that sincerity or that credibility, then just saying it doesn't mean anything. It's imperative. Every single thing you do needs to be credible and needs to be sincere. And when you build that credibility up, it's so easy to lose it by a misplaced word or an insincere comment. You'll lose that credibility.
Sure.
And this is all working towards this sort of final statement, if you like. The final statement that we can start discussing, if you like. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Your people have to believe, and that's the buzzword, believe. Your people have to believe what they do matters and that they make a difference. And when they do, it is noticed and celebrated. And now this is something, isn't it? Because we're talking about a belief here. We're not talking about something nice, something that, oh yeah, we say that. We're not talking about a mission statement or a value. We're talking about a human being believing that what they do matters and what they do makes a difference. So what are your thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, as you're describing those scenarios, there's all sorts of connecting points going through my brain. I mean, the connecting point towards the end there is about helping people feel as though they're meeting their purpose.
Yeah.
And of course, we talk about purpose and the importance of humans having a purpose. But I think the thing that's knitting it all together for me, if I may put it that way, Spence, is, and again, this is something we do talk about an awful lot. We're talking about leaders actually caring how their people feel. And caring sincerely and honestly how their people feel, which of course we know is not always the case. And, let's, I suppose, make a caveat there that, and you did mention this earlier on with the example of the HR manager who had the thin-lipped, furrowed look at you down the other end of the screen about time. Because generally speaking, managers have got their own job to do as well as manage the jobs of other people as well, and manage the people and the problems and the personal stuff and all the rest of it that comes with management leadership. So it is a big thing. It's a big ask, and we're asking people to focus their time and efforts on how other people feel. I think is what I've heard, Spence. Is that right? In terms of how people feel.
I think it's consideration of feelings. It's consideration of motivation. If people aren't happy in the jobs, why aren't they happy in the jobs? Whereas if somebody turned round, I would say that, and I do say this in some sessions. When was the last time a manager or a leader turned around to you and said, "Thank you for that," and it was credible and it was sincere and it was timely? How did that feel when that happened? And I won't say every time, but 9 times out of 10, people turned around and said, "You know what? I remember that because it was quite isolated, quite specific, and I felt incredible. I felt great because somebody turned around and said, 'Thank you for that.' I felt like I was part of it." So I know what you're saying about finding time, and it's talking about feelings and things like that. But finding that little bit of time to drop a little golden nugget into somebody's life like that, I think actually pays a lot of dividends.
Sure. I think there's an interesting maybe sub-conversation to have here as well, Spencer, a later date, maybe around psychological safety, because I came across this stuff, a similar discussion point a little while ago, again, working with a group around psychological safety, and we're talking about when leaders thank their teams. This particular team did say that if our leaders started to do that, we would be incredibly suspicious about what their motivation was for doing that.
Credibility and sincere, credibility and sincere straight away. If it's not there, it means nothing.
No, exactly. So I think there's a really interesting topic, Spence. So really quickly then, just to recap from the beginning, in terms of the fundamentals of gratitude, we talked about challenge state, which is about that positive reinforcement, positive language, drawing people towards what you'd like them to achieve, rather than, of course, the opposite. We talked about brain chemicals and the oxytocin, serotonin, etc., and creating trust and creating engagement and so on and so forth. And of course, those go hand in hand with the challenge state. And then we've talked about the 4 fundamentals, and the 4 fundamentals themselves were immediacy. So where possible, try to give this sort of positive reinforcement, say thanks, a bit of gratitude, as close to the moment as we can, so that it's fresh in the mind of the recipient, so that it feels more credible and it feels more honest.
And it also underlines the fact that this particular behaviour
was good. Sure, absolutely. We talked about parity or balance. So, of course, and we talk about this in feedback as well, Spencer, that the relationship ratio model, of course, is where we occasionally do have to give feedback that might feel a little uncomfortable or maybe perceived as a bit negative, but then we earn the right to do that by giving positive feedback several times before, during, or after. Okay, perfect. So that's the balance, right? Sure. Specific. So we mentioned the generic thank you to everybody, but where possible, really pick out some things to talk about with certain individuals where we really can celebrate their part of the overall success. Because again, that's the positive brain chemicals, and so on and so forth. And then the final one, which was that it was imperative. So
that credibility and sincerity, that's absolutely imperative. Without that, then nothing else works.
Spencer Locker, it's been educational, enlightening, and engaging. So thank you very much, Spencer.
Thank you, Dave.
And we'll see you again on another T2 podcast. Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.